In fact, youth leaders are telling us that politicians need to see it as it is. They want to see you guys, all the politicians, relating directly to the coalface of crime. Yeah. Are you, Larry Baldock, prepared to spend a day in the life of a delinquent to try and better understand what our youth leaders are up against?
Of course. Look, I've been out there before. I've worked with youth for most of my adult life. And I went, like Chester, to South Auckland. We've been to Christchurch. Gordon Copeland and I were on a special committee set up by the Minister to look into the effects of the Prostitution Law Reform Act. And we came up with our conclusions. They came up with a whitewash sort of report saying everything was fine. We've been out there on Hunter's Corner and seen the kids of 14 and 15. We should be passing a law that makes it a criminal act for people to actually purchase sex on the streets like that. It's just not. It's not necessary in a civilised society, and that's what creates the demand there.
Phil Twyford, if I can just hand that over to you, please.
Yeah, and I want to just respond to the prostitution issue because I think it's been grossly distorted. Let's be clear about a couple of things. The Act, the reform, the decriminalisation of prostitution did not convey any kind of moral endorsement of prostitution. It was about public health and protecting the human rights and the health of people in the industry. We're actually talking about the
increasing numbers of underage prostitutes. We're almost out of time, Phil Twyford.
And I challenge whether there are increasing numbers. If you could please respond to the
question, are Labour politicians prepared to spend a day with a community youth leader to better understand what's going on at grassroots crime?
We are in, and we do, and I point to the Manukau Gang Violence Project where we put $10 million into working with kids, getting them out of gangs in Manukau. In the 13 months before it was implemented, there were 8 gang-related youth deaths in South Auckland. Since it was implemented in over a year and a half, there hasn't been a single one. And that's because we poured money into youth workers, social workers in schools, providing houses for kids who are picked up by the police, and it's been incredibly effective. So we are tackling the roots of crime on the streets as well as being tough on criminals.
We're facing an economic crisis. It's deepening. What's National's priority to protect the law and order budget?
Well, the law and order budget is probably the most important budget, I would say, in the country, because the first role of government is to protect its citizens. So National has made some significant pledges around law and order. More releases are coming today, and there's no suggestion that it's under threat. The indications that we've given, the policy releases that we have made, have all been costed. They come out of the 1.7 billion new money that's been identified by Treasury in the budget. Our concern is that Labor hasn't costed many of their promises that they've made since the budget at all.
Larry Baldock, is this issue so important that all the political parties need to work together collectively?
Yeah, the Kiwi Party's calling for a royal commission to, first of all, understand and then address the wider causes of family breakdown, family violence and child abuse. We have an enormous problem in New Zealand, and we're going to have a holistic look at it. One silver bullet isn't going to solve the problem, but we are doing stupid things in this country. The campaign on TV about it's not okay violence was a laudable attempt, but when you change channels or when that ad finishes, you're looking at violence on TV. Kids are sitting there seeing it's acceptable. Every family portrayed just about in our sitcoms are dysfunctional families. We've got computer games that kids are playing with that are just breeding violence in their minds. So we've got to do, we're going to have to spend a lot of money on this, but if we don't spend it, we're going to be paying for a long, long time in the future with the consequences of all of this.
Phil Twyford, is Labor prepared to work with the other parties to address some of these issues facing law and order?
And I think we do already, and we'll continue to. I mean, this is not a time for messing around with the resourcing and budgets for police and justice, and we'll continue to give it the strong support that we have for the last 9 years.
Your top priority for the financial budget for law and order?
For law and order, we will continue to fund social programs around rehabilitation and restoration. We'll continue to fund prison and corrections at the same high level that we have.
Well, we're about to sum up now. 1 minute to go for each of you, please. Starting with you, Phil Twyford, the priorities for Labor for law and order.
Sure. The priority for Labor is to build safer communities for New Zealand, to be tough on crime, and to continue to ensure that criminals are dealt with the kind of seriousness that they require. Crime is probably the most serious issue facing all New Zealanders in terms of their quality of life and their security of their families, and Labor will continue to invest serious resources. We'll put criminals away where necessary, but we'll also invest seriously in rehabilitation and restorative justice programs. That's critical, and it's about getting kids on the right track in life before they head off into a life of crime. And through our policies like before school checks and family start, we're going to continue to do that. It's no coincidence that in the last 10 years we've seen the lowest, a significant drop in crime rates, and that I think is linked with very low unemployment, 360,000 new jobs coming on track. So that's Labor's track record, and I invite you to support that with 2 ticks for Labor.
Larry Baldock, your priorities for the Kiwi Party, please.
Well, our first priority is, of course, to get rid of this stupid anti-smacking law where the government decided they could interfere in your families and mine and tell us how we should raise our children. If every family in New Zealand is doing the best job they can to raise good kids, we will reduce crime and we will make our society safer for everybody. We want to intervene in young people's lives who have gone off the rails, and we desperately need more detox and rehabilitation facilities in this country if we're going to address the huge drug problems we have. We've got to get tough on those who are producing the P. We believe life sentences should mean life sentences, no parole before 20 years, and then only being let out if they're safe for the society or they're too old to hurt anybody anymore. We've got to do a lot about those poor people in our society who have lost their parents and they're being bounced around in the social welfare system and being given a very poor understanding of values in life. If we continue to pass laws that haven't values, we will suffer the consequences of that. So I'm asking you, make a difference this election and give the Kiwi Party your party vote.
Chester Burrows, National.
The legacy of the Labor Party in government has been appalling in relation to law and order. Those people who have gone to prison, been part of any rehabilitation that's been offered to them, they've found that through the Straight Thinking program, actually you had a better chance of reoffending and going back to jail than if you hadn't done any rehabilitation at all. Rehabilitation isn't offered to prisoners who are serving less than 2 years. National believes it should be available to meet the needs of those prisoners who get into trouble and go to jail because they've got to come out better than they went in. We've got to have tough laws around parole to make sure that the worst repeat violent offenders don't have access to parole, and if they go on to murder, then life will mean life for them regardless. We need to have more police in targeted areas, like the announcement of 300 more police into South Auckland, and we will see that through, because actually the measure of how well a party does law and order is going to be in the county's Manukau district.
Thank you all for joining us. Phil Twyford, Labor, Larry Baldock, the Kiwi Party, and Chester Burrows, National. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again for our next election debate, when we'll be discussing the very topical issue of the economy. See you next time. Good night.